Mondealy is a brand new 2D narrative adventure game that was released earlier today. Now available on Steam, Mondealy was developed by uglycoal and published by Valkyrie Initiative. Thanks to the folks over at Valkyrie Initiative, I received an early preview of the game, and I'm happy to share my thoughts on it with all of you. Who would I recommend this game to? Will narrative gamers enjoy it? What games does it remind me of? What did I think of the story and the characters? Let's dive in. Mondealy tells the story of Michael, a human from the everyday town of Mondealy, who discovers that he's been living above the mystical kingdom of Dargrat his entire life. The kingdom of Dargrat is made up of humanoid animals, like lizards, birds, meerkats, and more. Recently fired from his job, Michael finds himself at home in Dargrat and ends up becoming a close companion to Riley, the kingdom's princess. After unraveling the mysteries of her past, Michael enters into a relationship with Riley, before ultimately being tasked with protecting the future of the underground kingdom. One thing I really enjoyed about the game was the world building. Dargrat is divided into 4 districts: the Upper District, the Forest District, the Water District, and the United District. Each district has its own unique feel to it, with its own colorful cast of characters. You can tell that a lot of work went into designing the districts, and I get the vibe that Dargrat is probably a world that the developers have been writing in for quite some time. It seems very personal, and I'm sure it has to be really rewarding for them to finally see it realized in video game form. I enjoyed how, throughout his journey, Michael got the chance to know each district on a personal level, and even had to adopt their clothing style in order to blend into them. It was a nice way of mixing gameplay and story, and helps the player to understand what defines each district. All of that having been said, I wasn't as big a fan of the game's story. Michael finding Dargrat was a great inciting incident, but from there, things are a bit all over the place. The game drops a lot of interesting story beats, but never really gives any of them the time to breathe, as major revelations are often followed by, well, more major revelations. I liked the game's length. It can be finished in about 6 to 8 hours, and if you're one of my subscribers, you know that I love short kings. But this is a case where I wish they'd taken some more time to flesh things out and let the plot marinate a bit more. From a gameplay perspective, there are some decent minigames, like this one, where you're tasked with gathering some plants to make medicine. But I wish there had been more, especially later in the game. During the final stretch, it's all narrative, to the point where, unfortunately, it felt like the action had almost been taken away from the protagonist, and in turn, the player. And even from a story perspective, there's just not much tension. The supporting cast overcomes all of Michael's obstacles for him. One last puzzle, or one last challenge on the road to the finale would have been a big plus. Because as it is, it feels like Michael just walks in and walks out of the climax without much conflict. There were also a few dropped plot lines, including a few things that seemed like they might be pretty endgame at the onset, though I wouldn't be surprised if they picked them up again in a sequel down the line. I did, however, love that the game was structured as a frame story. It's one of my favorite narrative devices, and I think it lends itself especially well to a video game. And seeing the storyteller pop up in locations throughout Dargrat was a nice little Easter egg. In terms of the story's mood, it has a bit of an anime feel to it, specifically those centered around the lives of teenagers, with lots of big emotions and high school drama, including dating, forbidden love, and the occasional awkward situation. All of this certainly has a strong audience, but I had some trouble with this, and the narrative at large, because of the game's dialogue. I get the vibe that it's a translation issue here, but at times, characters say things that simply don't sound like things real people say. There are stretches of the game where this doesn't come up at all, but there are others where it's unfortunately pretty jarring. I did enjoy the game's 2D pixelated art style. I felt it suited this style of game well, and I loved the portraits that accompanied each character. Some of the characters, namely Hess, Rufus, and Corsic, have awesome designs and help give Dargrat its unique personality. As for the characters themselves, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I liked how mysterious Rufus is. Tori has a great backstory, and there's a lot to Jesse, aka Froga. But Michael himself is rather bland at times, which would be fine if we had more control over his personality. And Riley, who's at the center of everything, took a while to grow on me. But my favorite thing about Mondealy by far is the game's soundtrack. It is incredible, an absolute A+, 10 out of 10. It is so good, which is so important for this type of game. Whenever you have a game with no spoken dialogue, you need a strong, driving soundtrack, and Mondealy blows that right out of the water district. Every in-game region has great theme music that really complements the vibe, and stuck with me long after I was done playing the game. Over the weekend, I was DMing a major session of one of my campaigns, and throughout it all, multiple entries from the soundtrack were circling through my head. Even right now, as I'm doing this review, some of them are still kicking around in there. The soundtrack is really an amazing achievement, and the developers deserve some serious credit for putting it together. So, would I recommend Mondealy? If you're after a game with an awesome soundtrack, you might enjoy it. If you're a fan of anime-style drama with teenagers and royal kingdoms, you'll definitely like this one. But if you're looking for a gripping story, or a narrative game with the occasional minigame, this might not be the right one for you. Uglycoal, congrats on the release of Mondealy. I hope to see more from the Kingdom of Dargrat in the future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this review, then be sure to like and subscribe. I'm primarily a content creator for narrative games, but I have been doing more reviews as of late, and I hope to do more in the future. In any case, this won't be the last time you guys hear from me this week, as I'll be dropping a brand new video on the Revenant Hill promotional images tomorrow at 5. See you guys then.